Alright. Hello everyone watching this. What you're about to watch is an interview between the two Hatch Art Gallery directors for the year 2020 to 2021. When you watch this, we'll be officially done with this job and graduated, which is kind of crazy. This interview functions as a part of the Director's Project Final Notes, which I conducted similar interviews with some of the past directors leading up to this. So some of those people were Kiel Torres and Yasmin Whaley Kalora, who were the directors of 2019 to 2020, Maxim Greer, who was the director from 2018 to 2019, and Michaela Hart D'Amelio and Chanel Bluen, which were the directors of 2016 to 2017. And I also had some correspondence with some other directorial teams.
This year we spent a lot of time kind of digging through like the archival documents, and that began us thinking about like lineages and how we kind of add to this like generational conversation between some of the directors. So that's definitely informing this interview as well. Yeah, we just like wanted to document ourselves, kind of just like reflecting on this job so far.
Yeah, so with that, I think we should begin.
Yeah, let's just go straight into it.
Amazing. Okay, so we'll do a little intro of ourselves. So I'll ask you first.
Okay.
If you want to introduce yourself,
okay.
Your name, the year of directorship, your job title, and like your program while you're at UBC.
Yeah, so my name is James Albers. I was the assistant manager, I think is the official job title.
Yeah.
But we also call ourselves the assistant director, co-directors of the space this year. I am a double major student in visual arts and art history.
Yeah.
And yeah, what about yourself?
So my name is Reiko Inouye, and I am, but will no longer be, the director or Hatch manager from 2020 to 2021. And my degree, I got an interdisciplinary studies degree, at UBC with a primary discipline in visual arts. Yeah. What were our main roles of our position? What are the roles of this position? That's such a confusing question. But I guess what are the written roles? Like I think about that as like what were the roles kind of expected of us from this job, and kind of how did we do that?
Yeah, I guess on paper, being the assistant manager of the space, I think the main responsibility that was kind of like written on the job description was very much just to assist the director in all of the exhibitions and programming, kind of just helping out whatever they need me to do. And on top of that, I'm also the head overseer of the AMS Permanent Collection. I'm supposed to, curate 2 exhibitions, like every single academic year around it, as well as I am in charge of the volunteer program that we also do at the gallery. But I'm the main, liaison between the gallery and all the volunteers that are involved in the space as well. So that's kind of like just on paper.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
I guess on paper, the director position is kind of a lot of the programming and exhibition stuff, and so I guess that looks like planning out during the summer the exhibition schedule. This year that looked a lot different because we did all of our exhibitions online, and so that was kind of like shifting what does that look like to run an online gallery space and plan all of that out. But a lot of it is the liaison. But I feel like the way that things function this year, because of like our, I don't know, directorial, I don't even know, vision, I don't even know what to call it, vision. Our artist partnership, I feel like we took those positions on very much like together, and I think all the decisions that we made was really together and collaborative.
Yeah.
Everything from running the social media to deciding on exhibition statements and everything. We really did that together. Like
we each kind of had like our lanes that we were more like in charge of than like the other person, but like within every single thing that we did, we made every single decision together, right? And like there was never a point where like we weren't on the same page about anything that we were doing. So yeah, definitely very collaborative in that aspect. And yeah, kind of within this approach, I feel like because of that, like a lot of our responsibilities on paper kind of like shifted and changed.
Yeah.
Just based on like what each of our strengths were individually.
Totally.
Like for example, you are so much better at like dealing with all like the bureaucratic and like AMS like side of things.
Yeah.
And kind of just doing like the more institutional stuff, which I didn't like. I didn't go there much this year because that scares me.
Yeah.
But
no,
yeah.
I agree. I think that the way that we split things up,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was like, it worked really well because we just like were able to communicate about that. And I think it kind of happens that way also because of the ways that like we already knew each other and could like work in a collaborative way.
Exactly. Yeah, and I guess as a side note, the fact that like we were able to accomplish like what we've done in the manner that we did because like we are so closely tied in like more aspects than just like our professional jobs.
Yeah.
Like we also kind of acted as like each other's like roommates, both living alone, like 5 blocks away from each other in like a pandemic. Like you were like my roommate as well. And I feel like because of like
we can never escape the hatch because of that. No.
Yeah.
Because of that, no, it's true. I feel like that did help because we were always able to like bounce everything off constantly.
Yeah. It helped like us accomplish a lot, but it also I feel like it made it difficult for us to leave the job.
Yeah.
Like I mean, the job wasn't really at the gallery this year, but kind of like separated from our personal lives.
Yeah,
which is
very much involved in our personal lives.
Very much, but
very much.
Pros and cons to that, but that's definitely what happened.
Yeah, I guess this goes off of that, but this is something I asked some of the previous directorial teams. But if you knew the previous directors before our year directing, which is true, we did know the past few years of directors.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways that was something that was really helpful, I think, to me at least, I remember at the beginning of the summer, I feel like coming into this job was really scary and I was really intimidated coming into this job, and like the amount of questions that I asked like Keel and Yasmin being like, help.
Yeah.
Like I think was really helpful, being kind of like having those previous people to like understand what is actually like how this job goes down, because there is no overlap in like the job where you're trained officially by
because usually like the only kind of like training period that you receive as like a new director is kind of just like whatever the previous directors decide to write to you in their transition notes. And like I guess there wasn't like there's no like mandate or anything where like the past director has to like have like a meeting with the new ones and like train them in like their ways. Like there's kind of just all expected to be handed down in this like broken up document, you know. But yeah, we did know the previous directors, and like I feel like not even just like their transition notes helped us kind of like create our vision for this year, but just like being involved in what they were like doing last year as well. Like we definitely brought this more like embodied knowledge, I would say, just like from like our memories.
Being involved in the space. Yeah, I mean, I think that brings us to another question, but like talking about our involvement in the space beforehand, like I know you volunteered at the Hatch. I volunteered very shortly.
Yeah, you volunteered too.
I volunteered too, and like you also had like works in shows in previous years, and I feel like that involvement really helped kind of give a vision of what the Hatch was, and like helped on this end, like okay, how do we go about like working those projects from the background? Yeah, which I think is really, really helpful and important.
Yeah, because it kind of like, it's like we know, like we have like the experience of like being, of like having artworks in the space before, and like working with the past directors to like, I don't know, to get them there. And
Yeah.
it's like because we were like involved in the space like before as like artists or just curators or just like exhibitors or even just helping like program an event or even just coming to an event, you know?
Yeah.
That kind of like helped me build up, I guess, an image of like what I think the Hatch like is and like who I think it serves.
Totally.
And like I was able to use that lived experience to kind of like guide how we were going to approach everything, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I mean, I think, that's something maybe we'll get to later, but like about it being a student-run space, but it's also a student space prioritizing like student works. And, you know, like that's the mandate and like that's who this space is ultimately for. And I think being on both ends of it, I think it's like we're coming into this, I feel like it's like, okay, what did I want to see being on the other side of this or whatever. I think that was like really helpful experience, kind of being involved in both ends of it. And like kind of again, the value of the space. I guess like with this project also, I think a lot of this project has been like a process of looking back through the history of the space and kind of how the space has been run over time. I think we spent a lot more time looking back this year because we had to due to like COVID and everything and like rethinking, okay, where are we going and like how do things function. And just thinking about like the difficulties of running a student space and like because there is a lack of transition between the directors. I think it's like, again, getting to know or having these conversations with directors has been a helpful thing of like, okay, how did this function in different years, and also just seeing like the very different directions, because I think the like ultimately there are right now just two people who run the space, and so it's like you have a lot of say, which is really cool, but it also is really intimidating. To like what you know what the Hatch does that year and like what direction you really want to take that.
Totally.
So I think it's, I don't know, it's been interesting to like think through like how the past has obviously like gotten to us where we are now, but also how each team has like kind of really taken on maybe like different directions and different projects, which I think is really important. And is an important practice. But I guess the questions next are around the roles of committees in the space. So I think like the history of committees, because the Hatch functions under the AMS, which is a student organization. Committees have played a huge part in how it used to be run, and so I think that used to be a lot of volunteer labor to actually split up the roles that we play now, which is like stuff that is really like installation and gallery stuff, like social media and doing promotion, doing all of the programming and market, like all of that, which is now just like us, used to be split.
Like when you found, or when you compiled that list with like HR and like, the archivists, just of like of all the people who sat on the past committees, like back since like the gallery first started, right? Like in the 40s and 50s. Like I guess the most surprising part to me looking at that list was just how many people were involved and how many names like have been written down that like were helping out the gallery space in like whatever whatever ways that they like wanted to do. And I guess like the history of those committees have shifted and changed a lot. They've also had many different names and iterations throughout the time, but somehow I'm guessing it's mainly like more institutional drama. Like that like got it there.
That got it there.
But
that it kind of all funneled down into these two positions. And then having a team of volunteers, right? Which I know that like in the past few years the volunteers have really functioned as kind of like gallery sitters or docents, right? And like kind of to man the space. Which we couldn't even do this year because we didn't have a space to man. So I guess your thoughts on like the volunteer positions for the Hatch, and like I know you obviously ran your permanent collection project, which was like an ongoing process, and like ultimately research group
Yeah.
around the archive to
Yeah.
curate a show about the history of the permanent collection ultimately, through kind of all of these archival documents. But I think that was a really, I don't know, really creative way to use like the volunteers, but also to like, I think, provide more opportunity within this, like, what the space can offer back to the students as students being involved in it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. And also, like, you were definitely also part of that project. Like, I did not accomplish any of that alone. Like, even the beginnings of that project, like, it was, like, your idea to at least, like, look for, like, the gossip in the collection.
We just wanted to look for the gossip.
And, yeah, like, I just wanted to acknowledge that, like, it was not just me who did that, you know. But according to our job titles, I technically was like the organizer of the volunteers.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of how it happened. And yeah, so I think like the Hatch has always wanted to kind of like foster volunteer opportunities for students to begin working in a semi-professional space, right, and to get volunteer hours and opportunities more so. And like how that has happened in like normal years that aren't plagued by a pandemic is they're typically like the gallery sitters, so they kind of just like man the space and like watch numbers, and they're also expected to learn a little bit about like each of the exhibition and to be able to like engage in conversation with people who come. And yeah, and they definitely like filled a role of like how to like exist in a gallery space and kind of like be the liaison between the public and what they're seeing on the walls, or maybe on the floor or on the roof or wherever the art is. So that was definitely like the main way that volunteers engaged in the space in the past. But as you're mentioning, and is obvious because of the way that we approached exhibition and programming this year, we decided to not have like any in-person elements, basically just due to like all of the COVID risks. It just didn't seem like the best utilization of like our labor. And because of that, like we also decided to run the volunteer program online. I guess like the main purpose of it is that we still wanted to like make this like a learning opportunity for any volunteers, students who wanted to like help out like in the space this year. And we thought that one of the larger projects that we could use helping hands with was kind of like going through and organizing all of these digital scans of archival documents.
Right.
So that was half the volunteer program. Yeah. And then we also were trying to digitize the entire permanent collection, which was a crazy feat that we're still working on. And I guess that involved creating all of these new like copyright forms that you and Paige really
tried to take on, which is not in our job description. Listen, I don't know how to write a legal document, is all I'm gonna say.
No, like I don't either, and like all I can say is like thank you so much for like taking the lead on that, because legal documents like scare me. Like I don't understand legalities.
Shouldn't be our job, but like
no, you need a lawyer to do that. Low key.
I know.
Am I in law school? I didn't think so. So we want to get the entire permanent collection digitized and put on the website, but we didn't have any of the copyright forms to like put the images there. And then on top of that, we wanted to have like a description of like each of the artists in the collection, as well as a little bit of information about all of the works. And I actually was mainly building off of the work that Yasmin was doing with the volunteers last year. They started compiling just like artist bios and didactic information for all of the works, and I kind of just picked up where they left off, and we were basically just preparing all of the content that would be on the website when it drops and when we finally obtain the digital rights, which we will probably have to put into our transition notes.
The next year may have to take that on, and that's kind of how these things go.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so that was like one aspect of it, and then the other aspect was doing this research project into the contents of the archival documents. Like, we basically were just inspired by moments of what we've been calling hot juicy gossip in the archives, and these were just moments that like they kind of just like spurred a conversation between me and a group of volunteers. Just like moments that were like either like ironic or like somebody's tone was like sarcastic or something. Just like moments of like I would describe as like institutional tension that we kind of like pulled out of the archives. And yeah, so on top of like labeling all of those documents and organizing them within the drive for like future purpose, like we kind of like doubled up that organizational work with pulling out these instances, and like through all of the moments that we pulled out, we were able to kind of like create artistic responses to them and piece them together in this like strange online narrative that we constructed that ended up being the permanent collection show. And I think through that process, like the most valuable thing, or there's many valuable things that came out of that for me, but in terms of the volunteers, I think it was a really great way to like engage with the history of the space and the collection, and to kind of like decide as a group like what narratives we were believing, you know? And I think like ultimately that was like the point of the project, was to like create like a narrative of the history of the space that was informed by our lived experiences, going through these documents, but also what we already know of the space, because a lot of the volunteers have been volunteers for many years, right? Like that's really the community that was created around the hatch. So yeah, it was just a really good opportunity for like students in the department to also learn these histories alongside us learning those histories. And yeah, I think that way we were also able to like offer this new knowledge that's never been really like succinctly put together. I mean, Aaliyah Shamshur did write those 3 essays, which we love her for that. But and actually those 3 essays did really impact the way that we went through this project, but also just our jobs as well. And yeah, she's definitely a very important person in like the history and the lineage.
I know. I wish I could have contacted Aaliyah if you're out there.
Aaliyah, if you're out there, we
really wanted to contact you. Aaliyah was the director of 2007 to 9, I believe.
Oh.
I think
Two terms.
I think she was actually a director for 2 to 3 years.
Interesting.
Which I find really interesting because I think she was able to do such incredible work during that year. She created the permanent collection catalog. And a lot of work that really affected us. So shout out to you, Aaliyah. Shout out to you, Aaliyah. Thank you for that. I guess what I was gonna say, about like the volunteer, what you did with the volunteers. I think it was something that came up a couple times throughout this year of like how volunteers have been used in the past, and kind of again like thinking about the student labor that happens here. And I think one thing that we both like were not trying to do was to like ask the volunteers to take on some more roles that arguably should be like positions, I guess, or like paid positions. And so I think like making sure that the volunteer program is in line with like supporting the students in doing stuff that hopefully like helps them as much as it helps us in terms of like experience within kind of this field of like, I don't know, pre-professional, semi-professional like level of working in like a gallery space. But I think the cool thing was like everyone really took on that project in a way that I think was like, it was exciting to see people engaging with the permanent collection in a way that I think people haven't, because people are like, we have a permanent collection, like what is that and stuff. And it was exciting to see people kind of taking that on in their own way, and like what kind of like was exciting for them. And I think like everyone, I don't know, I learned a lot from that process of just like experiencing everyone else's like what they found like important and interesting, and I think in that way it became like a very like communal, like we were all kind of learning that together.
No, that's true. Yeah, and I guess like one of the main takeaways is that like we learn how to run the space, and I feel like we just like learn the identity of the gallery alongside the volunteers.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what we held on to this year as well.
No, that's really true. We can move on to what were some of your favorite memories or projects kind of this year?
From this year?
Yeah.
Well, I have a lot of fond memories, and a lot of them have to do with like specific projects that we worked on, but also a lot of them are kind of just like random memories.
Like behind the scenes building the projects.
Like behind the scenes building the projects. Like I guess actually my favorite work, I don't know if I would call this a memory, but just like thing that we would do when we actually went into the space to do work was the relationship that we built with the people at the gallery upstairs. At the gallery upstairs, yeah. Like, we had this very special connection where we would just, like, walk in, and even, like, when there was, like, COVID, when they had to do COVID screening, and, like, they would, like, have to take people's numbers and temperatures, like, we just walk in, like, there was already a system, like, they take our temperature, and then we, like, go up to the people, and we developed this relationship where we just like drank a ton of like sparkly water with lemons in it. Yeah. And like that really got me through this year. Like sparkly water and lemon juice did fuel everything that happened this year. Thank you to the gallery. Thank you, gallery. So yeah, that's not a specific memory, but just like a reoccurring thing that happens that I think about a lot. Yeah, I really liked that. And then in terms of like projects or exhibitions, it's like again, like I do have a lot of good memories from like all of the projects that we did. Like the print one, I feel like really that was our first project that we curated alongside like Margaret and all of the artists that were a part of that show. And I feel like that was a very influential project that kind of like set the tone of like the types of projects that we took on. That we were going to be doing. Because it was very much like behind the scenes. It was about the process of them all printmaking. It wasn't necessarily about like the final output. It was about the process and like kind of doing like takeovers and the behind the scenes, which I think is cool because that's something that like galleries don't normally show. Exactly. No, that exhibition was very process heavy, and I feel like it utilized social media in a really amazing way, where we decided to kind of like do artist highlights and like make individual posts for like all of the artists, and then they also did like takeovers, and I feel like that kind of also happened in a lot of like of the later projects because it went so well in the first one. And then they also produced a zine, which was amazing. Which was really good. It was really good. And then another like influential project. I guess all the projects kind of like influenced each other, I think. But kind of like one of the earlier ones that that reverberated a lot with me was also the Feasting Fools at the Foot of the Mountain exhibition. I think that was the first exhibition that we did a online like event for. Like, do you remember doing like all the DJ stuff with me and Elio? I mean, I think it was just a fun, playful project. Very fun and playful. I loved how experimental working with all of those artists was. Like, it was really experimental as a project. It really influenced our
obsession with tarot.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And magic.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of online events, I thought that was that was really scary because we had never done something like that. But it was cool to be able to like learn / like play around with hosting online events like that, and I think that's something that like I would love to do more of.
Yeah.
And it was exciting to see people show up to it because the Hatch has never really had like a super intense online presence, and so like I don't know, trying to get people, I think exhibition openings and closings have always been a big thing for the Hatch as like a community thing. Like that's when the students roll up and like it's a party. Like we just like get drunk and like celebrate our friends' art, you know?
Yeah.
And like I think that was a fun thing to be able to still have something like that functioned like that, but via Zoom and safely, and I think that was a really fun project.
No. So that was definitely like a highlight moment for me. Do you have any specific memories?
I'm trying to think of favorite memories. I have so many memories. So many. There's too many things.
I'm still like processing them
I have
all.
I have like silly memories that I'm just like I can't believe that happened. Where like we tried to get that box made.
Oh
yes. For that sculpture, and then there's a sculpture in the Permanent Collection, and it needed a box made for like 40 years, and like we had to like carry it across campus.
Yeah, and it was raining.
And it was raining, and trying to get it back. I think that was really funny.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like I think all of the little memories. Mostly, it's just like us like planning something and like chatting in the middle of the night about a project and getting excited about it. I think that's like my favorite like small memories.
Yeah.
But
no, it's hard for me to like even pick memories because of like did memories surrounding work this year happen at work, or did they really just happen like at home?
At home, yeah.
Did they happen while I was grocery shopping? Probably. Like did they happen while I was like on my meditative runs? Yeah. Did they happen while we were like crying, via
FaceTime in bed?
Yeah,
like,
the amount of times that like we FaceTime each other in a day, insane. Like, and we also see each other every day.
Yeah.
Like that's how much communication and correspondence like has to go. Like we found had to go into this job in order to like, to just feel like we were on the same page for everything, and I think that was really important for us.
Yeah,
but yeah, hard to pick one memory.
Okay, so moving on to arguably one of the bigger questions, but something that I really was curious when I asked some of the other directors, because I think everyone has a very different vision of what that looks like. But what do you think is the primary purpose that the AMS Art Gallery, like Hatch Art Gallery, serves to the student body? Or like, who is it for, really?
Yeah, like, this is definitely a big question and a tough question, because I feel like it kind of shifts and changes every single year depending on like who's running the space. But I think even like including that narrative into my answer, like, I think the main purpose of the Hatch Art Gallery is to like be a practice space for like the students of the Ovid department, but also not just the Ovid department, like also like other groups around, other creative groups around campus, to practice exhibiting their art in like a gallery space where there kind of is like low stakes, because like we're really like the main audience is like the university community in itself and like your peers and stuff. But like I think the main purpose is to be a practice space for those students, as well as for the two directors to practice curating. You know, like I think it is like a very valuable space for whoever lands that position to literally just like experiment with like what they think a curatorial approach looks like, and like how to like run exhibitions and even programming, you know, and kind of just like put on your like big boy shoes for a second and be like, oh, like we have this space and there's so much potential, and being able to choose like what like yeah, kind of how you want to like make it feels like you make your debut in the space kind of. But yeah, definitely I would say a practice space for like both the side of like curating and directing as well as like the students to show their art as well. But what about you?
I would totally agree. I feel like we're on the same page with that, and I think a lot of actually the previous directors that I talked to said like a similar thing, and I think it is like this weird like identity, like it's weird situating the Hatch in like the realm of not only like the UBC campus community, but also obviously the greater Vancouver art community is like where does the Hatch sit within that? And I think the like hard part, or like where it becomes confusing, is because it's run solely by students, and it's like kind of mandate and kind of purpose I really think is to like give the students who are exhibiting a chance to practice showing their work. It's to give the students who are volunteering a chance to, you know, like figure out how to what it means to like be involved in like a space and running it, and what goes behind the scenes for the directors. It's like learning how to curate and stuff. And I think in that way, like it's cool because like no one really knows what they're doing to a full extent, and it's like I think it's the coolest opportunity that like provides all of us who are kind of like maybe going into, I don't know, this field, and a chance to kind of like figure it out and like do that in like a low stakes environment. And I think but I think also it's really cool to see like what students can come up with without that like time and space, because I think like it's very like I guess underrated of like the kind of full control that like the students get to like dictate how that space is going, because I think like the artists dictate as much as the directors do of like what that year's shows look like, right? Like, so like that's really like all in some ways like a very collaborative process between the students who run it, no matter where they are like situated, and like the people who show up to it bring the dialogue. Like the space functions as a really valuable like tool for the student body, and I think obviously I think it like serves the ABA department in a lot of ways, because these are students who are in this world, and it is the only like on-campus student-run space that exists, right? Like everything else is run by the faculty or like external like parties.
It's really the only gallery where like the students really dictate everything that happens, you know, like, and maybe that's like we can talk about that later as well, but like there are pros and cons.
There are pros and cons of that.
Of kind of like being your own boss, you know, like but
I mean, we can talk about that. We can talk,
But also that actually, just listening to your reflections also just kind of reminded me that like the space itself, I guess, like apart from like what it offers like the people who are involved with it, I think it also actually serves as an important site like on the campus in a very general sense, that literally is like an artistic hub. Like any students who are interested in like art or just like any artistic medium, the Hatch has always kind of served as like a space to like show stuff, and also as like a venue to do things. Like there's been a lot of collaborations in the past with like Discorder magazine, as well as CRTR radio, and the Photo Society as well. Like, the space definitely does have a reputation around campus, not just within like the ABA department. It definitely, I would say that, and that's part of its greatest potential, is that it is like a space where you can like funnel different avenues of artistic production into like one place.
Totally. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that those collaborations are really important that have happened, and I think it's cool to see like when those communities come together. Because I think like the institution like puts all of these things in like categories, but like there is a lot of overlap there. Well, I think this gets into the questions of like what is what do you think is like the biggest problem or dilemma that a student-run gallery, like because it's a student-run gallery, faces? Oh God. And then I guess like on the other end, what's the most valuable aspect of a student-run gallery? And I think that's something ultimately that you and I have been like going back and forth with, like a lot of I think the problems that we have faced in this job, and like talking to previous directors, they also had faced in similar ways. Are kind of this like back and forth with like why it's special because it is student-run. You know, I think like holding on to that space is important, but also ways in which maybe it could be better. Or make it easier for the students who like make it easier for the students and like serve the students better.
This is like this is a hard question.
It is a hard question
because I can't deny that there are a lot of like problems and almost like insecurities that arise from us being our own bosses, and like from having like peer control of like everything that goes on, because I think me and you both have like aggressive imposter syndrome. And like every single time that we would make a decision, like it was very hard to know if this was like the right decision, because like what structures are we basing ourselves off of, you know? But actually, do you want to start talking about like what some of the problems are?
I mean, I guess one of the biggest problems I feel like the Hatch faces is like is institutional, and it does have to do with like I think because it's run by students, I think like no matter what there is gonna be, and because it like doesn't overlap, like we have just like a year turnover and there's no overlap, like a lot of things fall through the cracks, and I think that like trickles down from like the AMS level of like that also being fully student run, and in that way I don't fully hold the AMS like accountable as like for all the problems necessarily, because they are also just students trying to figure it out. You know, ultimately, but I do think a lot of the things that like the Hatch faces is because there is this like lack of communication between different people, and there is no like clear setup for like how things go, and so I think that like there's a lot of things that happen where a year is not a lot of time to take on like the types of things that I think like a lot of directors try to do with the permanent collection. Like the permanent collection is its own whole thing, and like, you know, 2 students working part-time shouldn't really be running a full gallery space as well as maintaining like a $4 million art collection by themselves. Like I said it, like it's
like it's just too much labor. It's
a lot of labor, and it's also a lot there is a lot of responsibility and like experience that we've I think learned a lot through the process, and I think that's like again the trade-off is like it's a really valuable space to quickly try to pick up and like learn these types of like different skills, but it also is hard because there is no like clear guidance there.
And like kind of just piggybacking off of that, I think a lot of the problems of a student-run space is kind of this like, it stems from this identity crisis of the space that we've been talking about, because like I definitely think that each team of directors every year like had their own vision of like what the space was going to be, who it was serving, what kinds of opportunities they were offering like their publics, and I think that actually a lot of the times like that might differ from what the AMS like thinks of the space as, and like it's very apparent that each governing body, like the AMS institutions, even UBC as a whole, like and even some of like the communities involved and like other communities within the nest, like everyone kind of has like their own idea of like what the gallery is going to be. Just kind of because of like all of these like perspectives and like the dynamics between these perspectives constantly shifting and changing. Like that's another like major reason or culprit that like so much like information like falls through the cracks from year to year. Like it's very hard to develop like longer term projects or longer term goals.
Yeah.
Because of this like identity crisis that it's going through.
Yeah.
I guess.
No, I agree. And then like on the flip side, I'm like, that is one of the like biggest, I think, problems. But then on the flip side, you could be like, okay, then if like people were there longer, like I think the cool thing about the like sort of inconsistency of the identity is that like it doesn't get in like a larger scale art institution, it doesn't get like monopolized in a way that like this is our brand, this is our thing, and then like one person just runs it for like years and years, right? Like it doesn't have that because like each student brings their own like method and like voice to it, and that way I think that like the chaos of that is chaotic, I will admit, and it becomes very chaotic, and it like maybe makes, I think, larger scale, the hatch reaching maybe its like potential as a space harder like to actualize, but at the same time I think there is like beauty in the like craziness of like what's the hatch gonna do this year, because it really is based off of like what the students want that year, and like the volunteers and the artists that bring their proposals and the director's vision for like what they think is important to work on that year, which is a lot of pressure. For sure, like that goes on to, I think the people who run it to like come up with or like make a decision on like behalf of, I think, like the space, which is something that like I think we felt a lot.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, no, like definitely the gallery being student run has a lot of like there's good and bad aspects to it, and I think what we've been trying to think about is like what are the good parts and how do we preserve those and what are the bad parts and how do we like make them and how do we improve them. And actually maybe this is good for our next question. So there's a lot of pros and cons to having like a completely student run space, and because of the annual turnover, it's very hard to develop like long-term goals for the gallery, but especially the permanent collection. And I think that and actually also I guess on that topic, like there's already two narratives kind of going on. Like there's the student-run leadership in relationship to the space and its exhibitions and programming, but there's also the student leadership thing in relationship to specifically the permanent collection. And I think those also function differently. Like and I understand like why they've been like married together in the past. But I think that like if we really want to develop like a better long-term goal for the collection.
I mean, I guess ultimately it's like, the identity crisis of the hash being like the student-run space is like the problems that come from it is like kind of the like inconsistencies, the lack of like, we've called it institutional memory, of like the passover between directorial teams for like larger scale projects. And I think the thing that has affected the most isn't actually the programming space, like it's not the gallery itself, but it really is a lot more with like the permanent collection, because the directors are kind of asked to take on the role of both like a curator of a space and running everything within that, as well as like managing a collection, which I think you know, the committees in past years, the ways that volunteers have functioned in past years, like, and that's something that we've like realized through kind of talking to previous people as well as digging through the collection, has been like kind of taking on more roles with the collection. And so I think some of the ways that we like have been working working this past year has been on making kind of decisions and working on things that like we hope will benefit in the future for kind of like splitting up that labor. Because honestly, like in our like opinion, we think that the collection should have its own position that should be a full-time position, and that's something that has been proposed many years for many years, and something that unfortunately I think the AMS doesn't see ultimately the value of kind of investing that money initially, but I really think would be helpful to kind of separate the labor of the students running the space versus like somebody to run the collection and kind of head up those long-term goals.
I definitely think that ultimately to utilize the space to its best potential and the collection to its best potential, they have to kind of be treated a little bit separately.
A little bit separately, yeah.
You can't just like expect so much from two people, you know? And if there was a collections manager, as I mean, Heel and Yasmin were very heavily pushing for that position
and I know
to be hired.
that other years have pushed for that as well.
Yeah, like this is like an old conversation. And there's definitely a lot of institutional barriers to get that position hired, but ultimately, like, we think that in order for the collection to reach its highest potential, it needs to have a collections manager that's on for longer than a year, period. But we also believe that ultimately the yearly turnover for like the exhibitions and programming side of thing is actually a strength. And we would really love to kind of like preserve that structure, but also create a new one for the permanent collection. So that's kind of just like summarizing some of our student-run space problems. But even this conversation, there's so many different opinions and perspectives
that people have
onto it. I think this one is just the most, like, it's the truest from my own experience, at least, of like the space. Should we move on to the next question?
We can move on. Yeah, we can just talk about some of the hardest parts, like the challenging parts. I mean, I guess, I think I'm very conscious of the fact that like this year functioned so differently than previous years. And the way that we had to approach projects. Due to COVID and having to like figure out what does it look like to run an online space. There has been a lot of things that we faced that like arguably years before maybe didn't, and years after won't. Like we had this weird blip here.
I think it's all right to say that we ran the gallery in a very special year. Like, and I choose the word special. Very hopefully.
I like to think about it that way.
Because, and I think that this was actually very clear in your vision ever since you landed this job last May and had to work by yourself for the entire summer, that you were always very cognizant of like the potential that like an online platform, an online space, an online program could hold. And I feel like something that was very vital to our work this year was more like behind the scenes work, or like institutional like work, or just like labor to do with like the actual structures that the Hatch like runs under, kind of like the governing bodies that are there to help or not the space. And I think that kind of like that was maybe a byproduct of the online exhibition and programming and pandemic that we didn't necessarily anticipate. But I think that was like an important thing that we were able to do.
I think for myself, I think it really like challenged what like an art space is, because I think the thing that I actually missed the most and that like was really hard to like replicate is the Hatch functioning as like a social gathering space, and like the events that are thrown there. I think that's something that like the community that is drawn through having a physical space is really hard to replicate online. And I think like we tried our best at like and like throwing parties online I think has its own value, and I think there's something really like unique there. And I think the ways that different exhibitions took on online gallery or online exhibitions was really fun to like trial out different things. I think it made me question whether like the value of like an institutional space in an online way. I think that's something that I think a lot of, and this is maybe just a note to like bigger institutions, like I think it challenged everyone going online, but like really the artists have a lot of power in this time, and like, you know, I think it's kind of maybe it democratized or like poked a hole into the institution functioning online. Like arguably everything that we did online anyone could do, you know? And I think that that's kind of important to say, because I think people can just put together their own stuff online, and I think that like it functions as a really interesting like I don't know, liminal space as like something that the online exhibitions like this year really proved that.
I know what you're getting at, and I definitely agree. Like I think something that came out of this year, and like just from doing all of this like online exhibitioning, was kind of questioning the need for an institution to like back or give value to our art and like what we create. And in a weird way, it almost kind of like liberated, or it gave us the realization that we actually can liberate ourselves from like the institution. And like, and that maybe sometimes at the end of the day, like, the hatch is kind of just a name, you know? And like, what is it other than this fiction that we all pour our belief into, pour our value into? Not to say that it doesn't have value, because I do think that like communal fictions have value if you all believe in it, you know? But why do we need to believe in it as part of UBC or as part of the AMS? Like, moving forward from this job, like I think it's kind of given us the perspective to think like, what institutions do we want to be a part of in the future, or what institutions do we not want to be a part of, or even like the possibility of like creating our own like way about doing things, our own space, our own collective, like our own I don't know, just like way of like disseminating, creating, talking about art. That like, I mean, I think as long as you have like the vision, enough people who believe in it, then like you really can make anything happen.
I think that has been like a really empowering part of this year. And that I hope more people like take that on, and maybe we can see like that. Maybe that happened outside after, like maybe that's the effect that COVID had on like the art world and artists and art spaces. I don't know.
This is like a bigigger question than just like our experience online, but I think that was like a very like large conversation that we were talking about the whole time.
I don't know. I got on a tangent, and
it felt like a necessary tangent.
No, it felt right though.
And I think like another aspect of this year, and like the like COVID and pandemic and everything and all the changes that we decided to make, something that we learned throughout the entire process was that we really don't have control over a lot of external circumstances, and like, and maybe every year this is like similar in like in one way or another, like we never really have control, like no matter what, of like what happens
in life, this job, like, but well, like a lot of things that happened, we realized fast that like things change, and like whether that was like a COVID restriction and we thought that we were gonna be able to like come back to in person and throw events by second term, or whether that was a plan that we had made but you know people couldn't travel, or like whatever that looked like. I feel like a lot of that was a reflection of kind of this year, but I guess also in general, and like being able to just shift and change our minds. Like I think we realized we couldn't like have our heart set on one thing, because every project kind of like evolved throughout the process due to everything that was kind of happening.
Like it was very important to be able to like express our fluidity and to like kind of let each project kind of like guide itself, like alongside whatever was happening externally in the world.
I guess another thing that we really have had to like work through, or has been a symptom of like working under COVID, and just this year with programming, is being like adaptable to like things that change, because that's something that I think both of us were like, we're gonna do everything, we're gonna say yes to everything.
We had to learn to say no.
We had to learn to say no, like in
That's
this job.
something.
I think that has been a big thing, is like you want to do, like we wanted to do a lot, because it's like you're given this year, like we have to do everything. But I think given the circumstances, there was a lot of stuff that there was an like exhibition and a couple projects that we had kind of started working on with different groups, and for various reasons, like they didn't come to full like completion under the hatch, at least. And I think that was like really hard, because for both the artists and ourselves, because we really wanted to see that through. But I think it's important to like value both the labor that was done there, and like again, I think this is a reflection of us thinking about exhibitions as like that isn't the whole bit, you know, like an exhibition isn't like everything that leads up to an exhibition is arguably like the most valuable work, and I think like all the communication that happens, all of the like that's the most like fruitful labor, I think, and is often the part that you don't see and that isn't like praised, right? I think that's something that like we like letting go of those projects was really sad, and I think like holding space for those projects, I think in like we really value what has happened there and stuff, but also being able to like know when like kind of like let that go and be okay with that and value that for what it is, and in a similar way to like I think this project I think is also kind of us trying to hold space for the things that don't don't
make it into an exhibition.
And in a similar way, I think this whole year has been another way of like really wacky exhibitions that are like more research based and stuff, and that aren't about like art on walls in a space, you know. It's kind of like seeing the background work as just as important as the work that happens like in an external like picture perfect package way. Trying to bring the behind the scenes to the front of the scenes, you know, and holding space for that. Definitely. So I think that's been a big thing for sure for this year. But so here we are, like at the end. I know. Well, now I have to fix my posture. We're working on our posture. Yeah, that's another thing that we learned in COVID. Work on our posture, because we'll all be out here like staring at our computers, like hunched over. So at the end of this year, what advice would you give to either not even just directors, incoming directors, but also people kind of like involved in the space, whatever that looks like? Or like, what did you wish you knew? What did you wish you knew before? Oh my goodness. I mean, I can talk about like some of the past directors and what they said. What have other people said? Because I talked to Keel and Yasmin about this, and I remember like one thing that like Keel and I were talking about was, again, it kind of has to do with the identity crisis, of feeling like all of the pressure is on you, like doing this job. I think it's really easy to get carried away because it's like such a special opportunity. I feel like Maxim really said like, take advantage of it, like it's like a lot of I don't know, it's like a very valuable, like one other chance are you going to have to like run a space like that, and so I think it's really valuable, and I think we did really try to like, we got crazy with everything that we were doing, a little crazy. But on the other hand, I think something that was important that Keel said was like to be able to like not disidentify, but like everything can wait a day. Like I think she said everything can wait like one more day, and that like you need to be able to like let yourself separate yourself from the labor, because I think with like these types of student labor jobs, it's very easy to like take on more than we actually can or should. It's because running the hatch is like a really large responsibility, and it definitely feels like that when you step into the role, so it's very easy to
bite off way more than you can chew.
Yeah.
And like actually, and that's actually something that Keel also told me when I was coming into this position. She said, you don't have to do 10 exhibitions a year. Like, and that's specifically like the thing I remember she was telling me. And looking back, like, she was right.
Yeah, she was right.
But I think the main thing out of that like statement that I got was really actually like, don't be so hard on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not even really about like, oh, like do less. Like she wasn't saying do less. She was saying like, be nice to yourself.
Yeah.
And like, be kind to yourself because like you are making your own decisions, you know, and like you are in control, you know, of like of how many exhibitions, how you approach them, and like all this kind of stuff, and that this is like a great practice space to like almost like learn to set professional boundaries as well, you know, to like know your limits and make mistakes and just like know that like it's not going to go the way you expect it to, and like to really reconcile with that. That's really kind of like the piece of advice that she handed to us, and I would definitely say the same for people in this position in the future.
Yeah, I agree.
That's just one thing.
Yeah.
That's just one thing. I feel like I have a lot of advice that I would want to say.
I know.
But that's like the main thing that I remember.
I think that's the main thing.
And like, okay, what
take risks.
Yeah, I think that
would be one thing that I would say.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about
like,
a little bit?
Yeah, I think like simultaneously, I think it's like being kind to yourself and like being gentle with like you learning, and I think being honest about that. I think because I think it's like really, I don't know, I try to be like, okay, I'm just gonna like, you know, I think you kind of do have to fake it till you make it, but at the same time like asking for help is okay, and like not being able to do everything is okay, and like having to cancel stuff or like say no to things and setting like professional boundaries is okay, but I think on the like kind of like taking advantage of the opportunity way. I think like I would agree with like Maxim and like other directors who've also said that, is like I think it is a really special like opportunity, and I'm like really grateful that we got to do that and do that together. But like take risks, because it's like such a low, like I feel like it feels like it's the world, and like it feels like it's the world, but it's not. It's not. It's really not. And it's really not. And I think like it is ultimately like a practice space, and take advantage of that. And I'm like, honestly, take risks. Like do something
crazy exhibitions that you can't imagine anywhere else. Yeah, that you think that like maybe will turn out terrible or will fail or whatever, and it's okay if it does. But if it doesn't, that's exciting. Like understanding that it really is a practice space, like yes, there is a lot of room for failure, and like I know it sounds really cliche, but it's like you learn so much from your failures, or what you deem your own failures to be, because queer failure, yes, but yeah, definitely to take advantage of what the position does give you, to like be able to kind of like cater your vision around maybe like what you think you might want to do in the future, you know? And I think that every director just naturally does that, because there is so much freedom and you're naturally going to do what you want to do, but to really lean into that and like trust your instinct, trust your instinct, trust your intuition. But first, learn what your intuition is, because I feel like a lot of the times you mistake your anxiety for your intuition, and they are not the same thing. I learned that from tarot. I think that's important. Right? I feel like this entire thing has kind of been advice, but that would be us. Like, I know, it really has really been. Wrapping it up. I guess then, us leaving this job, what do you think? It's so hard to think this way already, but like, what do you think the role, how the role has influenced you or like equipped you to like what you want to do later? Yeah, this is a big question, and I feel like this question is particularly difficult for us right now because
we're like still in it.
Because we're still, like, we still have 1 week, we're still wrapping stuff up. And ending this job also coincides with ending our degrees.
Yeah.
So, like, we get asked this question a lot of, like,
what do you want to do?
What do you want to do? Where are you going to go? Like, what's lined up for you?
Yeah.
And there's so much societal expectation that, like, we have to do this more. I don't know. Or just, like, do something. And I mean, I've definitely learned, like, a lot from this role, but I think the most important thing, like, directly after it, is that I actually just, like, take some time for myself.
I think we need to
and,
take
like,
care of ourselves.
And, like, heal a little bit and, like, give myself the space to know that, like, it's okay that I don't necessarily know exactly what I want to do, but still to be, like, and I guess really focus on, like, the little bits and pieces that you do know, you know? Because, like, this job did give me a very, I mean, I don't know how comparable this job is to, like, running, like, or working for, like, an artist-run center or, like, a gallery, because admittedly they function very differently. So I don't even know if this is going to be a similar experience to, like, having a similar position at a different institution. Yeah. So who knows? But I think there's, like, some bits and pieces of, like, at least the, like, directing, curating, and, like, artist side that, like, I will hold on to. And, like, I think what I've really learned is that what really matters the most to me is, like, the community and, like, the social aspect of art galleries, of art, and kind of, like, the collaborative based approach. Like, basically just, like, other people. I think people is really what this, like, made me focus on in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like, or just, like, recognizing that, like, every institution is, like, people. Like, there are humans, and, like, they each come with their own histories. One of, like, there's so many valuable things that came out of, like, this experience, but I think it made me realize that I do kind of want to go into, like, a more, like, organizing role. I had a lot of fun, like, organizing the Permanent Collection show and, like, the slumber party. And I think, like, social events is definitely where it's at for me.
Stay tuned for, like, invites per party.
For some future, like, art parties. So we'll see. But in terms of, like, I have no doubt that this will definitely affect, like, my future career path, but, like, I don't have enough foresight yet to say, like,
how?
Oh, I'm gonna, like, move on to become, like, a curator or a director or, like, even, like, an artist in this sense. Like, it's too early to quite know yet for me, but, like, it will inform whatever I do. Do you have any, like, similar comments?
I mean, I think similar feelings towards everything. Again, because the Hat Show really view it has been, like, a practice space. I think it's been kind of simultaneously chaotic to step into so many different types of roles. It is, like, such a short amount of time, but I think it's been fun to get, like, tasters of a lot of different, like, ways of working with different people and like creatives, and whether that's putting on a project or an exhibition or whatever. I think that, like, the people has been the most fun part, and I think, like, the communicating with artists and, like, kind of brainstorming and helping seeing those things come to fruition, or, like, projects on that scale. Obviously, like, these are, like, some of the bigger projects that we've done, and I think like, in the social events, I think those have all been really, like, exciting to be like, oh, okay, like, we can do that, and, like, we could do that in the future, and, like, start working on that. I think in, like, an institutional way. Curating is really demanding.
Yes.
And, you know, I think things function very differently in institutions where there's, like, clear roles and things are split up, and so I imagine that would be really different in different art spaces.
Yeah.
I think for the time being, I'm, like, recovering from, need to recover from all of that, because I think coming out of both university as well as an institution in like this way. I think that like
mhm.
the demand of production is like a lot. Like now I'm like, okay, I need to be okay. And I think that is one thing it's taught me is like
Yeah.
that production doesn't have to look a specific way.
Yeah.
You know, production doesn't have to look like just an exhibition or whatever.
Mhm.
But yeah, I definitely think that this has like influenced or been like really helpful. I think again the hatch functions to like democratize like the image of like a gallery space in some ways and being
Yeah.
like students can do it, you know. I think it just like gives you the space to like trial that out, and I think it was like an important window to be able to look through.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful I got to look through it. Like, you know.
Yes.
But
An important window. I like that image.
yeah.
I like that image.
It feels like it. But so the most important question.
Yes. This is the last
The
most
last
important
most important question is when you watch this, we will be officially finishing our job, and May 1st is the turn of both our degree and leaving the hatch behind. So what is May 1st going to look like for you?
Yeah, so by the time that whoever is watching this is viewing this, I will hopefully be sleeping a lot, resting, binging animes,
Yeah.
binging Pose
Binging Pose
as well.
Season
Pose season 3 comes out May
May
2nd.
2nd.
And learning how to cook better. Better. And
Reading for fun.
reading for fun.
Reading for fun.
Reading for fun instead of like all my readings that I never do. And then also I think another thing is coming back to my own artistic practice.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Like outside of any institution, you
Yeah.
know? Like just like finding that fire again, I think. Because honestly, I think I lost it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like just being so having school and work be so demanding.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's kind of what May 1st feels like for me. Little snapshot.
Yeah.
What about you?
Like basically the same. Like I need to sleep for so long.
Look at these under eye
eye
circles.
bags.
Yeah, like
yeah, I'm gonna
we'll be getting rid of those. Tanning.
Tanning.
We'll be tanning a lot.
The sun is coming out. I need to tan. I need to, yeah, like reclaim reading, reclaim like a lot of this. I think reclaiming
Sewing.
creative practice. Oh, sewing. Yeah, I found like a great YouTube tutorial for like how to hem a shirt and like fix it up and make it cute. So I'm gonna be doing that.
Yeah.
A lot of sewing. Yeah, no, I'm excited to just come back, like you said. I think coming back to, I think it's like a psychological, obviously, like switch of May 1st, and it's like, now we can reclaim these things outside of the institution at like the school or this job or whatever.
Yeah.
But, and I'm simultaneously terrified and excited and relieved and sad to be done.
Yeah.
I need to go to therapy, like,
Yeah.
but
Multiple types of therapy.
multiple types of therapy, but yeah, I think ultimately I'm excited for the next chapter, and I'm excited to see who comes in next and
Yeah.
who takes on this journey next.
Yeah, and we hope that you find it as fruitful as we did.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything though.
Yeah.
This is like it. This is us signing off.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Do you have
this
any
is us.
final words?
Life is a game and you gotta play it.
Life is a game. You gotta play it. Be gentle with yourself.
And rest.
And rest. And that's about it. That's all I got.
Hatch 2020 to 2021
2021.
directors signing off.
Bye.